Get a mover and a second for minutes of February the 4th, the mayor and Councilor Harris. On the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any, motion is carried. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please? On the question, all in favor? Any motion carried. Any disclosure of conflict of interest? Seeing none. We'll go on to 6.1. Amy?
Yes. Thank you, Deputy and members of Growth Committee. This afternoon's first item is Envision St. John, speaking today about tariff update. So Andrew Beckett, CEO from Envision, is here to give us an update on various actions being taken in response to tariffs. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm going to very quickly try and make sense out of a chaotic situation and give you a bit of a sense of some of the work that we're embarking on over the next little while. So very quickly, across the board tariffs came into place in late January. Nope. Early March. Nope. Early April. Bottom line is we don't know when the overall tariffs are coming into place, but they're looking at 25% on most goods and 10% on oil and gas. That's from the U.S. Tariffs in place on oil and on steel and aluminum came in place on March 12th. And that's 25% on top of existing tariffs that were already in place on steel and aluminum. Also, we've got softwood lumber that already has a 14.5% tariff, and they're looking at adding another potential 25% on top of it, potentially 350% on dairy products. Retaliatory tariffs are to be rolled out in April as well, and we're also facing tariffs from China that are impacting a lot. Fair to say the landscape is not great in terms of that side. What I would say in terms of general terms, I think we're seeing a fundamental shift in terms of the relationship between the U.S. and Canada from a trade standpoint that I think goes beyond the current administration in the U.S. This has been talked about for many years, and I don't think it's likely to change in 4 years' time if there's a change in the elected side. It'll be a long-standing change. Recently, and I know, Your Worship, you've been hounded by a lot of different media agencies because there was a Canadian Chamber of Commerce report that highlighted the impact on our region and on the city, citing us as number one with a bullet in terms of the impact. We had the Atlantic Economic Council take a look at that report for us. We could spend a lot of time questioning some of the calculations and questioning how they came out. At the end of the day, though, we are a small city with Canada's largest oil refinery that exports about 80% of its product to the U.S. Tariffs are going to have a big impact on the city. I would say, and I'll come back to this a couple of times during my remarks, I think that attention on St. John, though, is a great opportunity. And I think it's an opportunity to capitalize on that in a number of different ways and really see ourselves as part of leading the path forward in terms of this change in trading relationships. Short-term focus, both from the standpoint of federal and provincial governments, has been on targeted supports for sectors that are impacted and businesses that are impacted, and also starting to roll out different supports that are going to be in place for displaced workers that go along with some of these changes. Long term, I'd suggest we have to look at the significant locational advantages that St. John has, and try and build on that as we look forward to medium and longer term transformational change in terms of markets, trade alliances, and trade capacity. And again, I know for this audience, I don't have to emphasize those, but our strategic location, the transportation links that we have in this area, we've got a thriving business ecosystem. We've got skilled and adaptable workforce present in this community, all of which are great assets for us to build on in terms of moving towards a changing landscape. In terms of the impacts of the tariffs, some of this is a little hard to predict at this point in time because we're only just starting to see them roll out. But the one impact that we are seeing right now is uncertainty. And that uncertainty is stifling investment. In terms of business attraction, last year we had 22 active files in terms of companies and businesses that were looking at this area in terms of potential investments. That's almost non-existent at this point in time. A lot of those companies have indicated that they're putting their decisions on hold until they get more certainty in terms of where things are heading longer term. So it's certainly slowing down some of those investments. Nationally, we're already starting to see layoffs in some sectors, delayed or canceled investments, and also we're starting to see, and I think this will increasingly be the case, some supply chain disruptions as people try and figure out what that new reality is. Locally, we'll start to see economic slowdown and would expect in terms of some of the sectors that we're involved in that there will be some layoffs associated with this. Undoubtedly, there'll be inflation increases. I'd suggest locally too, we'll see property tax revenues get impacted at some point in time. There'll be a bit of a delay in this, but the demand for housing will decrease. There's been some stories out recently that some centers are starting to see this already. So as the turnover of property slows down, that'll have an impact on property tax revenues. Energy price volatility can be expected, and certainly as far as border communities, and we're close enough to the border that it may come into a place. The FCM has highlighted that asylum seekers are going to become an issue in some communities too, as the people are looking for housing and emergency shelters that go along with some of these changes. In terms of actions that are being taken nationally, we're seeing retaliatory tariffs that have been put in place with one list that's come in place already, and another that's expected in early April, and until such time as some changes are made by the U.S. The federal government has moved to eliminate some federal trade barriers within the country. Enhancements in productivity and research funding is an area of focus for the government, but I would say all of this is tempered with the fact that probably within the next few days we're going to be in the middle of a federal election, and we'll have to wait and see what the new government has in play there. Certainly a big push in terms of broadening the export markets, in terms of looking at other markets, trying to align ourselves more with Europe and other areas where there could be export opportunities. And one of the areas that I'd highlight in terms of an example of where I think St. John needs to be front and center at this point in time is I think the federal government is going to be looking for investments in trade enabling infrastructure as a way to stimulate some of the economy over the next little while. A couple of the ones that jump to mind from my standpoint is I don't think there's any better time to be going after funding for Sims Corner. And framing it under it being a key part of the National Trade Corridor. That opens up federal funding and it should be of provincial interest as well. And I think there's no better time to be pursuing a big level of funding for Sims Corner. The other big one would be the Energy East pipeline. That at some point in time, I think the country has to take advantage of some of the resources that it's got available within its borders, and an east to west or west to east pipeline would seem to make sense in terms of one of the pieces that could be looked at. Provincially, the province has launched a website that's available that has a lot of their latest tariff information. It's quite good in terms of being a connector for the local business community in terms of different supports and people that are trying to get latest information. They're also doing a number of webcasts. I think they've done 3 to date in terms of opening up to the business community to find out some basic information about tariff supports that are available. So they're doing a good job in terms of getting information out, I think. There are 3 areas of focus in terms of businesses from their standpoint. They're looking at export and trying to look at broadening the export markets, competitiveness, so really looking at investments that help our businesses be more competitive in a broader side, broader market, and resiliency is their other side that they're focused on. There's been discussion about removal or reduction in provincial trade barriers. New Brunswick had the dubious distinction of being the second worst province in the country as far as trade barriers, behind, I think, only Quebec. So there's a lot of discussion in terms of trying to remove those provincial trade barriers. And in terms of impact, just to give you a sense nationally on this, that there's a number of different reports that have been done on the impact of internal trade barriers, but it's expected if they could be reduced or eliminated, it would lower the consumer price index by 15%, boost productivity by 7%, and inject almost 200 billion into the domestic economy. So removal of those interprovincial trade barriers is certainly a key action that could be taken. I mentioned that OMB is also something we're working with them as closely as well in terms of looking at different export markets and exploring different opportunities, but that will take some time. And I think the other discussion that you're going to see more of, and we may see something this afternoon in terms of the provincial budget, but I think we're going to see it more over the next little while, similar to Nova Scotia, is looking at ways to build on our assets. And one of those areas that I think undoubtedly will have to get looked at is natural resources side of things, particularly I'd say these rare minerals that are talked about. There are several deposits within the province that are of interest, and natural gas. I think we'll come back into discussion as being something that could be explored by the province. Locally, we're certainly seeing a push to buy local. I'd say that comes with its challenges, depending on how far you take it. Does buy local mean boycotting McDonald's? Significant local employer, but a U.S.-based franchise. We have to recognize that there's a great interdependency between ourselves and the U.S. that is going to continue, and we've got local businesses that yes have a U.S. tie, but they are still significant local businesses. But we're starting to see more and more in terms of a push to buy Canadian or buy local. Procurement contracts, I know the city's looked at this. Envision's done the same thing in terms of looking at our procurement contracts and cutting down on the amount that we're using any U.S.-based suppliers. In terms of the national push around fentanyl and organized crime, the RCMP and others are playing a big part in that, but I think that also has a spillover in terms of local law enforcement as well, in terms of any actions they can be taken to support those. I think there's also, though, some good tourism opportunities that come along with this. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the actions we're taking on this one. But it does open up both domestically some interesting tourism opportunities, and possibly some from some parts of the United States as well. And we're also seeing individual actions that are I think undoubtedly having an impact in terms of some areas of the economy. But I noticed today they were talking about the travel between Canada and the United States for leisure travel is down to COVID levels at this point in time. I think it was I forget what the numbers that were quoted this morning were, but it's several 100,000 less visits. 500, I think it was 500,000 that was less visits to the U.S. in terms of the domestic travel side of things. From Envision standpoint, we have regular update meetings with OMB. We're now meeting bi-weekly with OMB and are maintaining very close contact in terms of the actions that they're taking. We're also members of the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association and attend regular sessions in terms of updates from them. Investment attraction, we're continuing to look at opportunities, again, with ONB and with Invest in Canada in terms of opportunities that are present mostly within the European side of things at this point in time. We're working with the Chamber of Commerce on a couple of things, a possibility in terms of promotion around the buy local side of things, but also looking at possibly a targeted event sometime in the May-June timeframe that may speak more to the tariff side of things and connecting local businesses with some of the supports that are available. I mentioned tourism, where we've shifted gears. We've built on some of our past investments, but we're targeting Ontario and Quebec in particular, and just to a lesser degree, the Eastern United States as well in terms of our tourism promotion. See some good opportunities there. We're working with the Atlantic Economic Council in terms of looking at different reports that we can provide, and again, information that we can provide to the business community to address some of the uncertainty and unease that people have. And we've launched, and Craig will be talking about this a little bit more under his presentation on entrepreneurship. We have just recently launched a website that provides a little bit easier access for local businesses to some of the supports that are available. The other side that we're doing, we're going to be convening a group very soon. I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks, because again, I think St. John has an opportunity because of that spotlight that was created in terms of impact to really start exploring what that future looks like in terms of some of the export markets. There's all kinds of different ways all kinds of different opportunities that potentially creates for this area in terms of playing a lead role in terms of some of those changing trade corridors and the like. So we want to pull together a group to really start looking hard at this, to start laying the groundwork for some greater opportunities, and that'll include ONB, ACOA would expect, I just mentioned it to the CAO, that we'd like to have him join the group as well, the port and others, that we want to get a bit of a small think tank together to really start looking at what we think are some significant opportunities for the region going forward. So that's very quick backdrop, and be happy to answer any questions that people may have.
Okay, I just want to ask you a quick question before I go on to Councilor Harris. There's a lot packaged in what you just said there, but my question is, because St. John is targeted as the hardest hit city in the country,
Yes.
do we have expertise in place somewhere where I can go and say, look, I don't know who we've got trade agreements with, but I need X product and I can't get it anymore because I was getting it from the state? Do we have an inventory? Like, do we know who we have trade agreements with that we can get different products from, and who do we go to?
It's a great question, and it's an example of some of the information that we want to make sure that we're putting in front of businesses. ONB has a battery of business navigators that's exactly the work that they do. And they've been doing a lot of outreach with local businesses that are in the export side of things or significantly rely on imports from the U.S. side of things, and that's exactly the work that they're involved in terms of making connections and trying to look at ways to diversify the supply chain side of things for local businesses.
So there is no gap then. They have that.
They've got the capacity to do it, and look, this is I would view this, quite frankly, as it's a COVID level response that's being put to this from the standpoint of these agencies. ONB has completely retooled itself right now away from the investment attraction side of things, which really has sort of slowed down, into looking at export opportunities and looking at supply chain.
Okay.
And that's where they focus their resources to have those business navigators. And I've got a call this afternoon with the president of Opportunities New Brunswick, and we're looking at having some sort of event locally that would allow businesses to come in and speak directly to some of those business navigators to be able to address some of those questions.
Okay. Councilor Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. My problem with ONB has always been that it seems to be obsessed with solving the problems through its programming and funding models of players that already can solve their own problems. So big businesses like JDI and Cook Aquaculture are important, no question, but they have the means and the expertise and the staffing. You know, someone like the glass blower up the street, who has a pretty good business model, doesn't. And last I checked, small businesses, enterprises, of less than 10 employees still make up the lion's share of companies in this province. So it does seem to be a gap. I'm glad that it sounds like they're retooling. I guess I'll believe it when I see it. That's not really
what I might say, Councillor, is that yes, they're retooling. Again, I would say ONB is always going to be more focused on export and export ready businesses. They are getting into other areas because of the supply chain. But it's also work that we're doing with our entrepreneurship side of things, is to be more visible with some of those smaller businesses to try and address some of the questions that they would have as well.
Okay.
It's a combined effort.
That makes sense. If there's a bit of a hierarchy of expertise, starts at the local, regional level. So, okay, I guess the only thing that matters from where I sit, I'll give you the question, and then I just want to talk about how I arrived at the question, if that's okay. Just take me about a minute and a half. The question is, do you need a different mandate from this council to push a different approach in regional economic development to meet the needs of the moment? So that's the question, because I zero in, there's all kinds of risk factors. And I think if all we do is try to insulate ourselves from the risks of those tariffs, we're just spinning our tires. We're mitigating risks that we can't control. What I liked that you were talking about was critical minerals. Everything points to critical minerals being the backbone of advanced manufacturing that would be similar to what oil was in the 20th century. So we have the mayor of Timmins, Ontario, telling us that there's investment coming from United States firms and mines. They're reopening smelters up there. They're doing work around critical mineral work. We've had proposals come to this city around advanced assembly of battery and EV stuff, but there's other players that want to do different things. What's our pathway to get in on the conversation of being a viable corridor for critical minerals? Do we have a card to play here for this election to get a Mark Carney or a Pierre Poilievre to commit to an investment in refinement capacity? Do we have the pad ready work that we're trying to do around industrial parks? Do we have a play there that gives them a very clear perspective to say, I'm in St. John for 2 days, a day for one announcement. I'm going to book a meeting with somebody important, and that person in the meeting is going to know, whoever's sitting with this Carney or our local candidates is going to know the exact pathway. St. John wants to do A in the critical mineral play. We have the capacity around cheap electricity through St. John Energy's renewable advantages that they have with partnerships. We have a port corridor that's ready to switch gears. Here's the cost. Here's the vision. We need players. Like you talk about Canada East, but my problem with even talking about Canada East is if it's such a viable project, where's the private developer that's coming here to say, I want to throw $1 billion to get this pipeline built? They're not here. And the last I checked, Irving Oil didn't give a crap about building the pipeline out there. They're not putting any money on the table.
Councillor,
So
what's the question?
that's the question. Do you need a different mandate to kind of go at this? Because we are in a federal election piece here. I'd be happy to put a motion on the table if we need to move quickly at the board level. But if you don't need it, you don't need it. And I guess
I would suggest that no, we don't need a change in our mandate. It actually fits very well with our mandate, and in fact, it heightens the importance of some key areas. We're just in the final stages of working through our strategic plan for the agency. The 4 pillars that we've identified: growth readiness, talent attraction and retention, business attraction, retention and expansion, and visitor attraction. They're as relevant under today's terms as they would have been a year ago, although the actions we take now will be differently focused. We're doing a lot of the work that you've already sort of identified. We're putting together fact sheets in terms of our locational advantages, some of the key things that local businesses or businesses that we see as opportunities. The group that I mentioned that we want to pull together takes that a little bit further, though, because we do see things like the critical minerals, the natural gas side of things, and other opportunities that we think there could be a local play on, and that's why we want to pull together a bit of a think tank around that to really explore in detail what some of those opportunities are. But no, I think our current mandate absolutely fills, and I, for one, the city should be expecting that's the type of work that we're doing and responding to, and on an ongoing basis.
Okay, Councillor Law.
It's just what you just said. Natural gas is the opportunity. Does Opportunity to Brunswick deal with Repsol on the LNG to reverse and be able to export natural gas? If that's one of the, it would be the greatest export we could have from this province. And then in view of taxes, it would be great. But Repsol looked at exporting and then they stopped. Is the Opportunity of Brunswick can begin to talk to them again about changing that around to an export facility, Repsol?
I'm not familiar with some of the detailed discussions on that one, Councillor, in terms of what's going on. I know they are at the table for discussions, and that's an item that I have heard talked about. I also know that the capital expenditure that's required to make that happen is significant.
Yep.
And we'll rely on a European market that has to probably move more towards its less reliance on Russian exports of natural gas to create the market that's going to make that viable in terms of the investment that's needed here. But I'm certainly aware that some discussions are taking place on that. But how far along they are, I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to receive and file a report? Councillor Harris, Councillor Ogden on the question. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the update. 6.2.
Thank you, Deputy and members of committee. The next presentation is also from Envision. Craig Wilkins, he's the Director of Entrepreneurship and Business Growth, and he'll be presenting on Envision's Entrepreneurship and Business Services. Over to you, Craig.
Good afternoon, everyone. Absolute pleasure being here today. I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship and Business Growth with Envision St. John, and really kind of talking a little bit about what we do and a little bit about what we did and accomplished in 2024. And this works, or? Yep, I think we're good. All right. So, you know, where I spend the majority of my time with Envision St. John is really helping businesses start and scale. It's an impactful file that we have, and it's great to help those entrepreneurs kind of realize their dreams and expand them. Oops. So how do we do that? So some of the programs and initiatives that we have, we do offer one-on-one guidance through mentorship. So we have individual meetings with potential entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, business people, to really discuss what their gaps are, what do they need, how can we help them succeed. So that's kind of a big portion of what we do. We do provide training. So we partnered with ConnectionWorks in a big way to offer kind of those business scale courses. So it could be for an entrepreneur that hasn't started their business, or an entrepreneur that is running a 150-year-old business. So they're very specific courses. Could be on a specific course like Canva for design for social media marketing, as an example. So it's led by somebody who is an expert in that, and it gives some really good hands-on tools and resources. So we have different courses that are available through our partners. We do support the development of a strong business plan. So the cornerstone to any business is a very strong business plan. We meet with entrepreneurs, help them through developing that, going through the market research, making sure they understand kind of what they need to really consider when they're looking at starting a business or in a scale-up phase. We did, and Andrew mentioned it already, we did just launch a new tool that's available to everybody. So you may have seen it on social media and through, but it's sjbusinesssupport.com. And that's a fantastic tool where people can go on and really kind of look for some of those tools. So, to the earlier point on import-export questions, if you have any questions regarding that, there's actually a section on there for import-export guidance that will connect you through to the OMB business navigators, the federal government, different organizations that are available to support. There's everything on there from access to funding, to business supports, to the chambers, kind of a whole slew of different available tools and resources. It's been accessed quite a few times already, so the public is really kind of backing it and sees some good resources there. Access to capital, we do manage the Impact Loan Program, which is a loan program for startup or scale-up businesses in the City of St. John. So it is exclusive for the City of St. John businesses, and that would provide low-interest loans from $5,000 to $50,000 to either start a business or scale a business. With that, we work with those entrepreneurs through the whole process. There is a separate committee that evaluates all of the applications that come through. We kind of call it our own little dragon's den. So the entrepreneur comes in and pitches to the committee with their full business plan, 2-year financial projections, and kind of what they're looking to do with it. So it's a very impactful program, thus the name Impact Loan. I've got some stats on kind of what we did in 2024 on kind of that next slide, but it is one that is available to all businesses in the City of St. John. It also does focus on underrepresented groups, which is great. About half of our applicants last year were from the newcomer and new resident area. So, developing these businesses that perhaps they had back home, and now they're able to kind of open up the St. John location of that business. Business Retention and Expansion Program. So this is a new program that we've just kind of launched. We're kind of looking at it now with all of the tariff challenges that are coming up on how we kind of tool it to be more specific for the import-export market. So what this program is really to get in front of the businesses. So it's really kind of setting up those meetings, having those conversations to understand where the barriers are, where are the gaps. And Councillor, to your earlier point, OMB, fantastic for the large scale businesses. They've got a lot of resources, particularly now with the import-export file. But getting into those small, medium businesses is really kind of that local level. So that's where we're going to be going out, and we've already started to meet with individual businesses to really get a understanding of where those gaps are, so that we can kind of advocate and create programs or initiatives or connections that they may need. And the connection part is key. So when we talk about procurement and connections between different organizations, it's very super valuable to have. If somebody comes to us and says, I have XYZ problem, if we know that there's an organization that is able to help and solve that, we can be those kind of warm connectors. So talking about 2024, so we had a very busy year. It was fantastic. It is super heartwarming to talk with entrepreneurs. You hear them sharing their stories and kind of what they want to do. It's incredible. But just to kind of go on some of those tangible numbers, in 2024, we met with 250 distinct entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs to help them navigate through the system. So find out what they need to succeed, how they build their business, the different tools. Obviously, not all of them are building a business that comes through right now, but we are helping them along that journey because the journey of discovery is just as important as the finish line. So that was an increase of 189% compared to the previous year. Our impact loan program itself, we had 16 loans approved, which is an increase of 200% year over year. So we were quite busy. That came with 46 loan applications. So as I mentioned, half of those or thereabouts was from the new resident world. That was an increase of 328% year over year. And we, through the loan program, injected $565,000 into the local St. John economy through business loans. They are repayable loans, so it is a self kind of sustaining loan product that we can offer. It's a low interest rate. There's a lot of really good components to it, but a lot of it comes with the support that we also provide for it. So it was a great, rewarding year. So that's a little bit about kind of what we do in terms of business and entrepreneurship growth. Would certainly love to take any questions that anybody has on any of the things that I've talked about or haven't.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thanks. I'm one of those recipients of the impact loan, so I always like to see how it's developing and changing. When I started the Tool Library, we were a for-profit entity, and that I think has always been a bit of a blind spot. I talked to one of your folks at Envision, Nicole Fair, about this a while ago. There is a social procurement option here at the City of St. John, which to me is a business opportunity. It's just waiting for somebody to quarterback businesses to be those kind of suppliers. But social enterprises, how do they talk to you guys right now? Because last I checked, I wouldn't have qualified as a nonprofit social enterprise for an impact loan. But maybe that's changed because I know, whether we're an exception to the rule or the rule, but I know others like us who look at these options around how are they going to incorporate? Does it even make sense to be a for-profit entity looking for partnership models and in dividends through investors and preferred shares versus common shares? Or is there a play at a different level? Because that environment around social enterprise is developing quite rapidly and proving to be more viable in some cases for certain industries. So how do you guys handle that type of change in the environment?
Yeah, great question. How we would support is because whether you start a not-for-profit or for-profit, it's a business, right? So we are able to help you through the whole process of starting the business, going through the business planning, financial projections, all of that. The actual loan itself is intended for a for-profit. So the impact loan hasn't opened up to not-for-profit. Kaleidoscope Social Enterprise is kind of our connection. So they would have availability, different resources that can help support that. We also help entrepreneurs kind of look through different grant programs. We would help them with their kind of application throughout that if that's an area that they need support on. So what I'll say is while the impact loan program itself isn't for the not-for-profit world, the rest of the services that we have to offer would help support them to get them to the level of that.
Yeah, I guess I would encourage that. I mean, I'm talking to one other business right now who I'm trying to provide some mentorship around refinancing some of their loans that they've taken out. We paid off ours with you guys 2 years ago. But I've often thought about that. How does a business, this is my last question, Mayor, or Deputy Mayor, sorry. How does a business who's gotten so far then needed to pivot, reapproach? If, like I know you say Kaleidoscope, I mean, that's a limited fund and it doesn't really engage around trying to seed social enterprises. It's still a bit of a dog's breakfast. Yet there's more opportunity than ever to kind of play in both sandboxes as being a sustainable, profit-driven entity while being a non-shareholder, non-profit corporation. To me, that's a missing piece. So how does a group reapproach you if they are a for-profit entity and they do need to scale? Like you mentioned, the fund is now for scalability. Is there a lower amount if you need to refund, like if you need to rescale? Or is it just a $55,000 upper ask that you can ask for per?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we advocated, so the loan program itself is funded through ACOA.
Yeah.
So ACOA is the one that sets the rules and regulations for it. We advocated very strongly on the expansion part of that loan. So last April is when we were successful at getting the new terms of it. Previous to that, you had to be under 40 in order to qualify for an expansion loan, and the maximum loan.
Under $40,000?
No, under 40 years old.
Oh, because it was like through.
I think it was
young entrepreneur stream stuff.
That was where it intently was back in when it was designed. So we advocated to have the age restriction removed, because the reality is by the time that you start a business, likely in your 30s, potentially even already in your 40s, by the time you're ready for another another cash injection, you're probably over 40.
Yeah.
So we advocated for that. We were successful at getting it. All of the organizations that manage that loan program. The other component was that the loan topped out at $25,000. We were successful at getting that up to $50,000.
Okay.
So it's the same conditions whether you're expanding versus starting on the amount. So anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000. Part of the expansion loan is, what is different? How are you expanding? What's this project? That's really going to bolster a change. So I hope that answers. Great.
Okay, Craig, thank you very much for the update. That was
you.
a pleasure. Can I get a motion to receive for information? Councillor Harris, Councillor Lowe on the question. Thank you very much. Next item, 7.1.
Thank you, Deputy and members of Growth Committee. Our next item is a few updates on the city market. Fabricio Lima is our growth manager, and he'll be providing this update. And before I hand it over to Fabricio, I just want to mention last week we did hold our developer symposium Wednesday. We had a very good turnout, about the same as last year, around 50 people. And I just wanted to advise Growth that at the next meeting we'll come back and give you an update about the feedback that we've received from the symposium. So just want to mention that before we hand it over to Fabricio.
To support ongoing growth and improvements, we are actively exploring federal and provincial funding opportunities. In terms of tenant recruitment and vacancy update, staff are actively discussing with potential vendors to fill vacant spaces as we recognize the importance of having a full and vibrant market. To support recruitment, we're launching a targeted social media campaign starting next week, which includes recruitment-focused social media campaign. Also, we are underway filming videos, in fact, with the city market manager discussing future and success stories from Jeremiah and Charlotte Street Bakery. Static advertisement to attract full-time vendors next week will be also in place. In terms of style movements and construction updates, so Wildcarrot construction is progressing, walls and floors framed. The fit up is underway. Some design issues caused some delays, but fixes are in progress, and flooring company is engaged for final installation. Chicken by Felix fit up will begin once Wildcarrot's move in is complete. In terms of strategic initiatives, and looking forward to capital work. I'm pleased to announce that we have selected a new implementation manager to help drive initiatives forward in 2025. One of the key projects will be coordinating the fit up of the T Infusion. And in addition, as part of the strategic plan, we are mapping out key initiatives, including reviewing the governance piece, which has already kicked off and started, leasing and operations, as well as planning for future eating area, scoping capital projects such as the 2-aisle layout in the deck seating area. The City Market Strategic Plan is our blueprint for success over the next decade. As we approach the 150th anniversary, we are focused on strengthening our market for vendor customers and the community. So I look forward to sharing more updates in the months ahead. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, any question? No? Okay, well, thank you, Fabio.
Thank you.
Update. Can I get a motion to receive for information? Councilor Harris and the mayor, all in favor? Thank you very much. Next item. Amy.
Sure. Thank you, Deputy. Members of Growth Committee, our next item is a CMHC rental market report being provided by Mr. Andy Reid. He's our manager of housing, and he'll be sharing information on CMHC's 2024 rental market report and other housing trends from 2024 in terms of progress toward the city meeting its Housing Accelerator Fund goals. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Chair and Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. As was done last year, the purpose of this presentation is to present and contextualize some of the data released through CMHC's rental market survey. So the goal, not trying to provide the full picture of the housing market today. There's certainly gaps to be recognized in the information we do have and where we are in terms of current information. So this information comes primarily from the fall of 2024, but hopefully, presenting some of the data might confirm some of what you're hearing or, things you've kind of seen in the market and make for some discussion. But before we do that, I just wanted to recap different data set. We're into March now. So looking back on 2024 housing completions and what we saw, because 2024 was actually quite a large year in terms of construction and units completed in St. John. In fact, looking back to the data CMHC has available, it looks to be the highest year of completions on record. So going back about 3 decades. There were 486 units completed overall in 2024. And you can see from the chart that, I know it's a little small here, but the chart has the completions broken down by the neighborhoods pictured here. So, some things to draw from this. Obviously, apartments were the largest housing form in 2024 of those units completed, comprising 85% of the completions. And really, we saw Milledgeville, the North End area, leading the way in terms of where those units were being completed. 326 apartment units in those 2 neighborhoods alone, with several large apartment projects being completed. So to get a picture of what's under construction currently and where we're heading, looking at the 2024 housing starts, there's definitely a shift in where construction's happening. Obviously we have the 2 large projects in the Uptown underway currently. And so what this chart shows again is sorting by neighborhood where those projects are under construction, with the largest numbers on the top. So Uptown leading the way, construction also occurring in the west side. Still, the projects under construction, the largest percentage is going toward apartment buildings. So that kind of missing middle we're targeting. I'm not sure the fruits of our labor are yet being seen because we're only in 2024. We're still very early on and shifting our focus and trying to incentivize where we can. So with the starts here, we've also added a column, and this is not CMHC data, this is our own, just to try and give you a picture of where affordable housing is happening, in which neighborhoods, what type of building forms. So there's 125 units, affordable units overall under construction, and these are just projects we're aware of that are essentially securing that minimum no more than 30% of a household's income on shelter. We're aware that, you know, they receive support through most always through the province. However, there are 2 Habitat for Humanity projects that were included in 2024. Those projects are since completed on the west side. So altogether, 586 units under complete. It's looking like, you know, with those under construction, it will be another, you know, quite a large year once those all are completed. Similar to Milledgeville in the North End and the Uptown, once those large apartments are completed, likely take a few years for that demand to be absorbed. And then I guess similar in the west side, we saw that the new apartment also under construction with a little less area in other areas of the city. Next, just wanted to try and triangulate how some of that information is related to our targets we set out. Of course, one of the targets under our Affordable Housing Action Plan, we did set a target of 30% of all new construction being affordable units. It was quite an ambitious target. That plan was completed at the end of 2022. I don't think we anticipated the level of growth we've been receiving, but 22%, it's, you know, it's going towards that stretch goal. The other target we have, of course, is our Housing Accelerator Fund program. So this is just where we are today. And the HAF program, our progress is measured in terms of course, the number of housing units issued by building permits. So, you know, we're almost halfway there in terms of the overall housing supply. So in the blue are the permits issued, and the red, the numbers remaining. We have, you know, we're more than 3/4 way for the affordable units, so well on track for that, which is good news. And with those additional under construction, you know, it's looking like we're going to exceed that affordable unit target, which is good, because we want majority of our funding to go towards those units. Still some strides to be made in terms of the multi-unit, but we know that's just where the market is. So will be more progress towards that housing form as well. Next, just to look again at these the same breakdown in housing types and our overall housing target. Okay, so this is sort of the ideal world if with the projects who have applied for Housing Accelerator grants, if all those projects were to go forward to get a building permit, this is where we'd be. So our target is 1,124 units by the end of 2026. All those projects that applied received grant funding to go ahead. If they go ahead, we're due to exceed that. So it's nice to see kind of the pipeline match up. You know, the reality, likely all those projects won't move forward. We may have to pivot, open another intake, but and then there's always, you know, the next 2 years we're going to kind of see how things go here, but it's good to see things kind of line up in terms of our HAF target, what we set out to do with that program. So with that as kind of a prelude, just wanted to give you an update on the primary rental market survey. So this was released a little early, December of last year. And just to give some greater context to this, so this survey, it only surveys a private initiated structure. So those are the purpose-built rentals, 3 rental units or more that have been on the market for at least 3 months. So currently we have 9,600 apartment units, 262 rented townhouses. That's the primary rental market. It makes up about 3/4 of the overall rental market. There's an estimated additional 3,000 to 5,000 in the secondary market. So those are like folks renting out a townhouse unit, renting out a basement apartment. That's the secondary rental market. And then, of course, we have the home ownership market, which is 54% of our overall housing market. So when we talk about average rents and vacancies, we're only talking about the primary rental market. So where we are in terms of our vacancy rate today, in 2024, the city's vacancy rate increased in the primary rental market up to 4%. So you can see kind of that upward trend over on the far right. Last year, I think we were at 2.1. A healthy vacancy rate is considered in the 3% range. And when we look at why that's increasing, and where it's higher than other neighborhoods, I think it's helpful to break down again according to the neighborhood. So when we look at here, it's broken down by zones. You can see in the North Milledgeville area that vacancy rate's higher because we had those large new units be completed. It's going to take some time for the market to absorb those units. So the vacancy rate back in October in those neighborhoods was 6.5%. And in other areas, you can see it's actually, in the south end and uptown, the vacancy's gone down. In the east side, it's about the same. In the west side, the data wasn't released. And then overall, it's 4% here. This chart is just apartments, not including the townhouses. In terms of our change in average rent in the primary rental markets, so this chart just measures the change. The average rent didn't increase as much as it did last year. It did increase 7.1%, and that's largely attributed to that new construction. These units are new. In some cases, some of those apartments were higher end, so obviously that will have an impact in that overall rental market. It doesn't mean rents are increasing everywhere, but with those new structures coming online, it did result in that increase. There was less change to the south end, uptown, and west, where we saw those fewer number of completions. Benchmarking just against the other two cities in New Brunswick, the average rent, all bedroom units in 2024 in St. John was $1,133. So it's, as you can see, we're not kind of alone here. We're all in the upward trend in terms of average rents, and that compares to $1,353 in Fredericton and $1,272 in Moncton. There was a statistically significant increase in 2-bedroom units in and around Milledgeville in the north end. You can see that jump in 2023 for a 2-bedroom unit. Average rent was $1,050, and now this year it's gone up to $1,317. So you can kind of attribute that to those larger units. It will take, its supply. Its supply is good. It's not the only, it's not the only answer to achieving affordability, and it will take years for those projects to sort of filter down to more affordable rents. So just to summarize, last year, again, it was a high water mark in terms of housing completions. The trend is really towards apartments, like other areas where we see a lot of the push on financing has been for that housing form from CMHC. Most of those were construction in and around Milledgeville area, and these were projects that went through approvals, 2, 3, 4 years ago. Those units these new units have met the pent-up demand in those neighborhoods. They're going to take some time to absorb, and the average rent, the vacancy rates have increased as a result. 2025, we have 2 major apartments under construction in the uptown. So with that, we'll have another, it'll take some time for those units to absorb too. I really wanted with this presentation is to provide you some better data. I see at PAC, at council sometimes a desire for information. Where are the affordable units being built? What neighborhoods? What do they look like? So really want to try and track and monitor this a little bit better to give you the information and data. So there are currently those 125 affordable units we're aware of under construction. And as mentioned, almost all are supported by Housing NB. So it is good news they offer that great depth of affordability. There are an additional 231 possible additional affordable units. These are projects that have applied through grants to the city that we're aware of. So they're in the pipeline for the next few years. Again, we appear to be on track for our housing supply growth target. There is some economic uncertainty. I think 2025 at first had a pretty good outlook, and now, we have what's going on south of the border. So there's that economic uncertainty we've been talking about earlier in this meeting. I just say, ongoing monitoring of these housing stats. I believe it's important. It's important to help inform our community in planning and integrate into our future city initiatives. There are a number of highly related initiatives you're aware of. These are underway. They relate to, largely to our Housing Accelerator Fund initiative. I just highlight a few. I think with an e-permitting program, we'll be even able to give even better data, real time, on what we're seeing coming through the door through permits. We started tracking affordable units last year, and unlocking general density, the missing middle housing. Hopefully that will really help achieve that. There's no best practice for what's the balance of housing forms, but we do want to try and achieve more of those ground-oriented units, ownership housing, just because we've seen the market go so far to apartment buildings. And, of course, we have a couple of large initiatives that will be coming back to Growth Committee soon, just to highlight the governance reform for housing study, a growth strategy review later this year, and our urban development incentives review. So there's lots of initiatives that will feed in, I think, to this analysis over the coming year. And thanks for the opportunity to present some of this. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Questions? Start us off there, Councilor Ogden.
But Brent, did you have yours on?
Yep.
Go. He was first.
No, you were first. He's not.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's okay.
One thing, Andrew, I'd like you to see is that apartments aren't going to grow as much 2024 as in the future because of all this economic uncertainty. And Canada is in the worst position for tariffs, probably the world, because we are the most reliant on the most uncertain economy. 76% of our trade goes to the United States. So, even Mexico is in better shape for diversification of their markets. And so we're probably going to have a tough time until the political situation gets solved. And, I'm worried about that. But the North End, the old North End, McDonald's down the Bridge Street, etc. Almost all the land has been purchased. I know we've always cleaned up all those properties and everything. Just in the last few years, almost every piece of vacant land, from the old farm property to all the Hugger properties to the back of Shamrock Park, almost all the land has now been purchased. And I had great hope. But now there doesn't seem to be any construction. And a lot of the boarded up houses are now taken care of. I know I talked to a developer. I told him about one on Bridge Street, and he purchased it. But the thing is, you're not seeing the action and I'm just talking about the old North End now, that other parts of the city have experienced. I mean, there's not a lot of holes in Lower West Side, but the old North End, there's still a lot. It's kind of like a set of teeth with a whole bunch of teeth out of it. And those major lots, especially with the Huggard properties and the old farm properties that just sat empty since 61. So can we, and I am on the old North End plan, but can we actually focus on a particular area, give incentives like, I don't know, permitting, water for a couple of years to get somebody in there? I mean, we've seen, where are we at now with the province? Is it the 15%? Is that dropped off of new construction? No? Okay, so is there something we can do just to focus on that area? I mean, it's really, Main Street's really going to help the old North End. And it was probably one of the causes of it being isolated for so long. Because the old North End used to be one of the nicest places to live. Now with Main Street coming on board, that's going to make it more pedestrian friendly. And hopefully we can get all those pieces of land from McDonald's down to the main brace, that big, that Mark Eustace bought, filling up again. Because that's what people remember, is that Main Street that had so much life. But is there any way that we could just focus on the old North End? All recent purchases of land, but go to those owners and say, what can we do? Because maybe some of them are planning a 12-story building, you know, where maybe we have to go for garden homes. Because I called 3 real estate agents this weekend, and they all told me the demand for people purchasing homes is still very high.
Mhm.
So is there any way to go back to those developers and say, let's have a look at your plans and maybe we need a little bit of a change and maybe we can help you get going?
Through Charity or Counselor, they're all very good comments. Others might have something to add to this, but I'd say it's, you know, the North End plan, long talked about, really is that vehicle. And there was a group Envision helped convene last year of the property owners. So we had participated in that, and that it was a very excellent group. They will be engaged again, I know, through the North End process and how to best. It seems like in the North End, it's just missing that catalyst first in to
The land's all been
create some
purchased.
confidence.
You know, there's all
Yeah.
the new purchases of land, and I had great hope, but now everything seems to be stalled.
Okay, Andy, go ahead.
Thanks, Deputy. Just if I could jump in. I mean, Andy is right that the North End neighborhood plan is the vehicle for change in that neighborhood, as we've seen in the South End with the Central Peninsula plan. I mean, that really moved a number of initiatives forward, and we've seen the outcome of the plan and it continues. So definitely the North End neighborhood plan is the strategy to help the North End. But we did hear comments at the developer symposium last week. We provided the group with some, you know, useful information about funding and other opportunities, and we did get some good feedback that we should likely see some movement in the North End on some of those sites this year.
Councilor Harris?
Yeah, I have a couple points, Deputy. So cut me off whenever you'd like, and you can circle back to me.
Thanks very much.
Turn.
Councilor Lowe?
Go ahead. One, the biggest impediment to the old North End, to Councillor to Ogden's point, is it's really difficult to get a post-appraisal valuation on a vacant building to warrant the capital required to fix it. And until we see the level of vacant buildings and boarded up buildings in the old North End, which you say they've been dealt with, they really haven't. There's still a lot of them there for as far as a level of saturation in a small neighborhood. That becomes the biggest problem, because how is a new construction, although they might be happy with a lower property tax assessment, how are they supposed to show the loan to value ratio that's required for general financing? Which brings me to my question. What are we doing? Because my dream was always that we would have a municipal housing corporation by now that could start quarterbacking these off-the-shelf plans that the federal government just built for us. CMHC has just delivered us an entire catalog of designs. You have your architectural schematics, you have your engineering schematics. Yes, I'm sure the footings change based on where you go. There's still always on-site work to do to assemble this, but we have an opportunity now as a city to say, CMHC wants to build this, and they've given us all these free plans and designs to deploy. We want this one there, that one there. Here's our price tag. Everything's zoned already. Pave the road, and then start headhunting nonprofit builders to go in and build it and own it. Because real estate leasing is still the biggest industry in the city, in this country, and as long the market right now looks like it's delivering us 20,000 resident households that can't afford the rent. So I don't know how to see hope here. I get that we've gotten some better numbers. The vacancy rate I like to see. You say 3% healthy. I think it's 7 is a healthy rate based on what I've seen Strong Towns put out as far as what creates downward pressure on rents. But either way, that's just back. We can talk about that. We're measuring that. That's good. We're talking about it. That's good. That's important. But I guess I don't know how many affordable housing units we're losing. And the data from Stats Can says there's 20,000 households paying more than 30% of their income on housing. We're not making any progress there that we know of. It's 11. Yeah, sure, it's a little bit cheaper to live in St. John. We also make on average $13,000 less a year than an average household in Fredericton, and 14,500 or so less a year than Moncton. So we're saving $100 on rent, but we're losing $14,000 a year in median household income. So building the type of buildings for the people we have at the wages they make is the only thing that I can imagine doing. And I see that we have a lot of good long-term initiatives that are going to get us on track with housing typology, but connecting all this is the hard part for me. When we're talking to, and I know I haven't really
I'm
asked
trying to get the
question.
question here.
I know, but it's because I'm trying to imagine how to frame this to a resident.
Yeah.
What, you know, we're building lots, but more of them are spending too much on housing than ever before. So we're building all kinds of buildings, our vacancy rate's going up. Do I tell them it's going to be 6 years before you can afford your rent? Is it 2 years? I mean, not that we can control the rents, but we can at least talk about the problem and start aligning the solutions. And I look at this and I say, if we did put a vacant building back on the market, does it even show up on our starts? Does it even score for us? How do we get that low-hanging fruit in alignment from CMHC when they won't even talk to somebody unless they're building 6 units? A lot of our vacant buildings are 4 units or less. We have some grants, but it's not like there's initial mover money. So those are pieces that I'm worried about and concerned about. I guess there's a bunch of questions for you.
You've got a big package there.
There, anyway.
I'm not sure that Andy can answer all that.
I know.
I mean,
it's
at the end of the day, we build as much as we can, and you know, the market will demand what the vacancy rate's going to be. And I will say right now, thank you, Andy, because now I can honestly say, if you're looking for an apartment in St. John, then you better look north, because we got a 6.5 vacancy rate, and that's good information to have. Councillor Ogden, did you?
I could just to respond to Councillor, one question, which I think is important to highlight. You know, we did go through this zoning bylaw reform exercise recently, which was requisite from CMHC to make it easier to get to that 4 unit without rezoning, maybe reduce some regulatory barriers. CMHC has recently tried to target that income property developer range. So that's the smaller scale developer, 4 units. And there are certain financing programs they've launched around that. So, you know, one of the things I think we'll try to do through that missing middle initiatives is to target the non-traditional developer, the diversify the homeowner, the person who's adding that unit. Maybe they do get financing through CMHC. We're learning more about what that program looks like and what kind of loan parameters are around that. But I think, you know, that smaller scale infill really is the opportunity. The large apartments aren't going to solve the housing situation for everyone, but it is good to see that new supply come.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just maybe to add on to what Andy's saying. So, you know, we reported this, I think, just maybe last week, Council, in terms of the catalytic projects update, but there's 9 projects underway with about 125 deeply affordable units. And there's 9 other projects in the pipeline with another 199 deeply affordable units. So that's 325 in the pipeline, deeply affordable. And then you add to that the new capacity that's coming online. However, I do appreciate, you know, your comment, Councillor, because, you know, there's 2,000 people on the wait list, we understand as well, in the St. John region for deeply affordable units. So while we're moving the needle, you know, there's still a lot more room for it to move in order to really address the issue at hand. And some of these other matters, like, you know, the rezoning and the ability to, you know, quickly adapt your home to other opportunities for housing units will also provide some relief. But it's all of these items combined.
Is it possible to find how many affordable units we're hemorrhaging versus gaining? Is that even possible?
Yeah, and that's something I know has been raised, and I know we were taking a way to look at it. I don't know if we've actually gotten the number from the province yet, but that's part of the discussion we're having with Housing NB as well, in terms of looking at that percentage of reduction of people on the wait list, so that, you know, items as far as maybe removing the ability of having units deeply affordable are removed from the developer's opportunity or made more difficult, so that we don't have those deeply affordable units removed from inventory.
Okay, thank you.
Turn my mic off, sorry.
Oh, thanks. We do track the number of units lost total, but not the deeply affordable. So that's what we need to pursue. Yeah, but we do have the total number.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ogden, can you quickly wrap us up? We can get our
Yeah.
last item in.
Andy, my point was, like, there's not as many vacant buildings in the old North End anymore. I'm on the streets every day and there's not as many as there used to be. I think we've done a good job there. Secondly, I just worry that if we're only chasing apartment buildings, if these buyers of property are thinking, I'm going to put in high rises, I don't think that's going to work. And what I'd like you to do is just identify that some of them are multiple, some of them are multiple lots are owned by one person or two companies. Can you go back to them and say, maybe can we put in a series of garden homes? Like that, I think the 16 homes were destroyed in the big fire by the Huggards. Now, maybe they're planning big high-rise buildings there, but just getting people to live back in there would bring life back into the old North End. So if we could just identify those several blocks in that area, not so much fixing up buildings that exist, but go to the ones with a piece of land and say, can we help you reconfigure what you're doing to get some housing in there? Because they might sit empty for 10 more years. And I think that's going to really hurt the old North End. So if somebody could go back to some of those owners, they were all recently purchased, and just say, maybe the 10-story unit building is not going to work.
Okay.
Okay? That's what I would like to suggest to you.
Okay, that's an answer. There you go.
To the chair, to the councillor, we are actually having those conversations through the North End secondary plan. So we created a list of property owners who are our key stakeholders. So right now we're coming out with the background report, right? So we're going to talk about what have we heard from the neighborhood advisory committee people, and then starting to look at what vision did these developers have, because sometimes we don't want to just impose a position on them. We want to understand.
That would have to be increased substantially. So I'm just wondering, within the next decade, will that actually happen?
Well, growth, some growth is likely to happen, and North End has a lot of capacity. We ran some initial estimates. We could have about 5,000 new homes within the North End, 7.5 meters square. My point was that we are trying to uncover what the developers are thinking and then align the plan. And I think we have to remain open and inclusive. There are going to be all forms of opportunities. There are going to be some mid-rise. There is going to be some low-rise. Large swaths of North End are already zoned RL, like low rise, which allows anything from singles, semi-detached row housing. So that opportunity is there. And what we have heard anecdotally from developers, they might want to work on the conversion of existing homes into smaller units. So maybe a house that's 2,500 square feet gets converted into 2 or 3 units, right? And this is also the type of project that does not require a lot of large new capital. It can be done, so maybe the units can be affordable. The point is that I think we are in the process of having those conversations to understand their vision and then create those opportunities. And the secondary plan will lay it out for them. Where can you do low rise? Which are the locations that are right for medium and high density? And they're not going to be everywhere, just to kind of manage that.
Please keep them.
Absolutely. You're
Sure.
part of the advisory committee, so we will have those conversations with
that's
you.
right.
Thanks.
Okay, can I get a motion to receive for information? Mayor and Councilor Ogden on the question. Thank you very much, Andy. Very well done. Next item. Inclusive campaign, 7.
Yes, yep. Thank you, Deputy. And members of Growth Committee, our final presentation this afternoon is from Catherine Melvin. Catherine is our project manager for the St. John Local Immigration Partnership, and she'll be presenting an inclusivity campaign as part of the Succeed and Stay program in with our immigration strategy. Over to you, Catherine. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks, David. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to present today. We're going to talk about the next steps in our region's commitment to inclusivity through our latest campaign, which is going to be called Our Region, Our Home. So this inclusivity campaign actually builds off the Succeed and Stay strategy, priority 2, tactic 4, which is to improve communications to citizens. And it actually builds on a previous campaign, which you might remember was the See My Value campaign. And so we took some of the learnings from that, we formed a task force, and we developed a new campaign to keep this conversation going about the importance that newcomers bring to our region. The task force included members from our retention working group, which is a part of the Local Immigration Partnership, from various organizations, including the YMCA, the St. John Newcomer Center, and Prude as our settlement organizations, as well as the Local Immigration Partnership, the City of St. John, Envision St. John, the Fundy Regional Service Commission. So we really wanted to bring everyone together to work on this as a campaign together. And the overall goal is to develop a campaign that we'll be able to use year over year and bring content to highlight diversity and important milestones and observances in the community. So we really want to be able to use this campaign and continue to adapt it and make sure that it stays relevant and that we can use it for different observances like Black History Month, Pride Month, or National Indigenous Peoples Day. Sorry, it's a little messed up there, but the campaign is featuring personal stories from newcomers in our region. So just to highlight the 5 profiles that we're featuring for this first launch of the campaign, we have Boris and Natalia, who are Ukrainian newcomers who are really involved in the arts and culture community. We have Isabel and Rafael. They are Mexican. They're here with their family. They're really thriving, and they have a beautiful story to share. We have Nilton, who's from Taiwan. He's an entrepreneur and an architect, really giving back to the community. We have Theophil. He's Cameroonian. He's Francophone. He's highly involved in volunteerism through his children's school and some of the settlement agencies. And we have Juma Boy, who you might recognize. He's from Tajikistan, but he's actually also a registered nurse working here at the regional hospital. So the campaign is going to be branded under Our Region, Our Home, or Notre Région, Notre Chez Nous. We ensured it's a bilingual campaign, so we're reaching both our Anglophone and Francophone communities. And our goals of this campaign are to increase awareness about the region's newcomer community. We really want to highlight the valuable contributions that newcomers bring to the region. And we want to make sure that we're saying that the St. John region is an area that welcomes people from all backgrounds. And we want everyone to know that everyone actually has a role to play in fostering inclusive communities. So really reinforcing that shared community, and every resident can help support newcomers and help support their retention here. The first round of our campaign is about to launch this week, and it's going to launch for a couple weeks, focused at a Sea Dogs game, which I'll talk about, through internal bus ads, social media, billboards around the city, some printed media posters that companies and organizations can put up in their place of work, and a website as well. The calls to action to follow this campaign are to go to our website, which is going to be ourregionourhome.com, and in French, it's Notre Région, Notre Chez Nous.com, and learn about newcomers' stories. We know that sharing stories and storytelling is a very powerful tool that we can use to help create an inclusive community and help to combat some of the anti-immigrant sentiment that we're seeing. Another way we can support this is to ask someone to share their story. So if you see someone out in the community, or you're sitting beside someone at a hockey game, for example, ask them about their story and really create those connections among community. Get to know your neighbor. Volunteering at a newcomer serving organization is another great way that we can support retention and newcomers. This is the call to action that is on our website at the bottom of how you can get in touch with the newcomer serving organizations and be a volunteer to support. And we also ask community partners to use and share the assets that we've created. So our official launch date is coinciding with International Day for Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So we lined everything up to launch this Friday for this date. And I conveniently found that the St. John Sea Dogs were playing a home game that night. And so I thought, what a great partnership that would be if we could use that venue and the people in the venue to be able to support this campaign. So Friday night, we're going to, the Local Immigration Partnership will have a booth set up at the game. We're going to feature some of our videos during their reel and between plays. And we're also going to have an opportunity at intermission to talk about the campaign and share one of our videos. I'm also wearing one of our shirts, Our Region, Our Home, which we are giving out to newcomers. And we've invited many newcomers to the game that night so that they can also be a part of this campaign and sharing the story. And we kind of left them a little bit vague so that it sparks that conversation. And you might be sitting beside someone and saying, hey, what's your t-shirt all about? And it's really creating that conversation. So yeah, St. John has always been a community of growth, and we value diversity. And we really want to work together to strengthen our inclusivity and make sure this is a region that newcomers can thrive, stay, and belong. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Catherine. That was an excellent update, and look forward to the results of the campaign. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. Do you have any room for additional stories to tell?
Yes.
Because I do say this, there's two sides of this. One, there is a lot of anti-immigration sentiment in our society right now. A lot of people have drummed up, a bunch of problems and put it on the backs of people coming here. But the blue collar sector, so people swing a hammer for a living. I can give you 2 names of individuals who I started with at a small training program that we did in 2023, who are now working full-time with the Red Seal Bricklayer and working toward their Red Seals. I think there's a really cool story to talk about some of our newcomers in the construction industry, because they're essentially building homes for everybody.
Yep.
Not just, so they're solving more than just, their additional, on a housing crisis and housing prone problem system. They're solving that problem, which is pretty amazing. So I can give you those things. Love to help with that. There's some really cool stories of some of them getting connected. And don't let Nilton off the hook. He's got more stories. That guy, single-handedly branded us when he wasn't even allowed to work here at our little neck of the woods at the tool library. Built all of our brand profile, all of our stuff. He did work for Catapult. He helped us on community builds. He's done free architecture work for people. He designed buildings at Jackie Chan's movie studio in Beijing. The guy has some crazy stories. He's just one of these people you find, you're like, how are you here, man? So anyway, don't let him off the hook. That would be the other thing, but happy to help if you need contacts for some of those blue collar stories, because I think that's somewhere where there's some opportunity to tell more of that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. We do have opportunity for that. That's actually one of the calls to action on the website, is if you want to share your story, get in touch with us, because we want this to be something we can do year over year and continue to show new faces of the community in different sectors as well.
Yep.
Thanks, Catherine. I was just going to ask, website versus app. You've got a website. Is app the way to go? I don't know.
That's a really great question. No, we just have the website right now. All of our material have a QR code to go to that website and download some of the materials and give us feedback. It also has there's going to be 5 videos, so all the videos will be embedded in the website as well. Great point. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Can I get a motion, please? Councillor Ogden? On the question, all in favor? Okay, and the next one is adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Okay, second. All in favor? Thank you, everybody.